BTS, I'll do an introduction now, so I don't mind telling you all about it. The BTS Creative Academy is the podcast. It's where I sit down, I talk to creative people about the things that they're doing and try and find out why they're doing it. And I'm on a journey doing that with filmmakers, people in theatre, people in dance, artists, poets, all sorts of different fields. And so, yeah, we're about 150 odd episodes into this now.
Great.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I've done about 7 or 8 of these today. So,
oh, wow. Well done.
Yeah, really going through it. So thank you ever so much for joining me today. We're here at the Romford Film Festival, where your film has been showcased here today. So, sorry, who is it that's joining me today? We've got Cathy.
Cathy Tyson, producer of The Consequence.
Kammy Darweish, I'm the writer, director and actor in The Consequence.
Is this on?
It's on.
Everything's fine.
Yes.
Yours is red there.
On. Yes, you've got a red light there as well.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, no, the green light is if it's linked to the Bluetooth and
Okay.
all the technical stuff.
Lovely.
So we're on, we're live. Yeah, we got you there.
Oh, good.
So the film is The Consequence. Tell me about the film.
Basically, it's about a black right-wing activist who accuses a Muslim man of an honour killing of his own daughter. And when the Muslim man, whose name is Asif, is found not guilty of it, he comes back to haunt this right-wing activist woman 2 years later because of the action of her words has caused him very bad consequences in his life. You know, not only does he have to live with the murder of his daughter, but also his wife committed suicide over it. So he takes action back on her because he's come to the end of his tether. You know, he was trolled, he was haunted by people throwing things at his house. They tried to set his place on fire, and he's come back to take action on her. The film equates to understanding empathy. It's very easy.
Sounds like a revenge story.
It wasn't so much a revenge story in that sense. It was basically how cheap words can be and how dismissive people can be about other people's lives. The fact that this man has lost his daughter through a murder is said in a very dismissive way on the radio. And it has caused him grief, and it caused his wife to commit suicide. So he wanted her to know what it felt like, because this particular right-wing activist also has a daughter. So basically, I'm not sure how much of the plot I should give away. Actually.
Well, that's up to you, isn't it? It's,
it
sounds. I'm intrigued to know more. So I think if we leave the story there, have you got anything to add to that,
Just
Cathy?
about where the inspiration came from when the Sandy Hook massacre happened. Alex Jones, the InfoWars creator, because the families were talking about gun control, every time there's a massacre in America, then the gun control lobby comes, or
the NRA.
People start talking about, how it needs to be more censored, and he was threatened by that. So his attack was on the families of the parents, the grieving parents, and he actually called them crisis actors, that they were lying about their children being murdered. And the thing is it's almost unbelievable to think that you've lost your child, and then someone's saying that you haven't, and B, saying that you're just doing it for
lying.
attention. So it's insane that a basic level of compassion was not afforded them by him, who was an incredibly strong
and his followers.
person. So it's almost, and my partner was sitting on the couch one day saying, I cannot understand what is going on. I mean, and I said, he talked about it, and I said, why don't you write something about it? And that's sometimes, the unbelievable things where, what is happening to some of us, the heartlessness. But basically, Alex Jones was driven by fear. He wanted control. He wanted his gun. He didn't want anybody to. He's frightened.
A lot of society is driven by fear.
If he doesn't have a gun, then how is he going to protect himself when somebody else has a gun? And then he laid into them instead of offering sympathy.
And of course, in America now, it's almost second nature that a school gets attacked by a gunman.
Yes,
and yet the right-wing party, the Republicans, refuse to do anything because they're supported by the NRA. Now, I know we don't have that thing in this country, but we have certain similar situations, especially
I think with the United States we feel a bit of a connection because they're quite they've got some similarities to us, don't
absolutely.
they? And we can almost see, like, we're looking at this from an outside perspective, and we're like, how crazy is this?
Yeah.
How crazy is this situation?
But bringing it back to the UK now, in the lead up to Brexit, I can remember being with somebody and he'd let somebody pass by on the street, and that person happened to be an immigrant, and they didn't say thank you for the fact that he'd let them go past, and he was critical, It went from, someone hasn't said thank you to me, to, and you think you can come to this country and do this and you haven't. And it was like, hang on, where's that? The hatred or that, never mind the US, the kind of simmering, they're the problem. There's not enough space for them in hospitals.
I guess we go back to fear.
Yeah,
is where that comes
not enough space for them in hospitals. And it's like, hang on, they've just come from a war-torn country. A lot of them risked their lives to get here. And then, so it's unbelievable. And regardless of the states, these kind of lack of empathy, lack of compassion, it happens here, as well.
Yeah.
So
just in a different way.
And in this story, Kammy has made it more relevant to now
because
here.
he is a UK citizen anyway, but what the fear is, and she says it in the film, is that you come over here and you bring your rituals with you. And that's not the same. We're talking about a small section of society that, bring their own rituals, not necessarily religious rituals. For example, there's a suicide bomber, I think in the Quran. It's a sin to commit suicide. And yet these suicide bombers look for justification within it, saying, but it's because of this, because we're at war, and they're not at war. So we're talking about a small section of society who believe in that.
Yes.
But the majority, for example, there's 1.23 billion Muslims in the world. The majority of them are all peaceful. You're talking about a tiny, tiny proportion of all of that. And yet everyone gets the blame for it.
So is your film trying to highlight the importance of the words, the importance of the right words said in the right way?
Yeah. Having an opinion, yes, there is freedom of speech, but it's got to come at a cost. If you're going to insult and tell people they're bad, then other people are going to say they're bad. So maybe there isn't such a thing as freedom of speech, but you've got to be careful what you say because of the effect it has on...
Words are powerful.
Yeah,
aren't they?
Absolutely. And especially from people in places of power. If a politician says, you shouldn't like that man because he does this and he does that, there's a section of society that will say, I don't like him now because he doesn't like him. Tommy Robinson is a...
There are some people who are very, very okay with whipping up vitriol and hatred. It's part of it, they don't think about the repercussions of that. They play upon the flavour of the time, the fear of the time.
Why do you think they're doing it? Why do you think they use that?
Well, I think you said the word earlier on, fear, ultimately. They're fearful of being overrun. It's, for example, with the United States, sorry to bring that up.
It's all relevant.
It's all relevant. And they're getting more and more Latinos in. And of course, they're overtaking, or they will in the next 50 years, they'll be overtaking the white society. And the fear of the right wing means that they won't have a say in their own country. It's going to turn into another little Mexico or something like that. And that's the fear.
Yeah.
And yet, the majority of Latinos have the minor jobs in America. They work in the fields. They do all the hard labour.
Is there anything positive that we should be looking towards rather than all this negative, rather than this fear? Is there a positive that we should be looking at instead?
At the moment, it's difficult to say. I think we've been through some very difficult years, but there are people out there. There are some that are too far to the left, and there are some that are too far to the right. You've got to find the balance, and sometimes it happens. It usually happens for a short time. There is a balance. I can remember back in 97 when Tony Blair came in. For the first few years pre the Iraq War, he started to get a balance. You know, the country was in good shape, the NHS was in good shape, and then he ruined it all by going into Iraq and killing. Our soldiers were dying there, and it was unnecessary because it was all a hoax, you know, set up by the CIA and oh God, there's me.
We can go
theories,
down
conspiracy theories.
we can go down rabbit holes with these things.
Exactly.
But I do wonder if there is something within the art form that you're creating that offers a moment for reflection and maybe change for the positive.
Well, I hope so. I mean, with this one, we're not trying to be political in any way. What we're trying to say is, I mean, two words immediately spring to mind: empathy and compassion. 3, understanding. You know, regardless. And it's not just on one side, it's on all sides. You know, if we can reach a form of understanding, compassion will come in, and empathy. And therefore, I'm not saying things will be rosy, but it's a good start.
I also am very optimistic about the kindness of people. There are people who are feeding people off boats, you know, and they're on our Kent coasts. And there are, you know, the capacity for compassion is still greatly there amongst people that don't want to see people starve. And none of us want to go through a journey like that across the sea and risk their lives and children getting killed and drowning, really. And the thing is they're dehumanized, and this is what this character does. She dehumanizes them. And that's the problem, the dehumanization of other people. But there are other people that are, I've got great faith in humanity. I really do, because I think I see a lot of acts of kindness, and even myself as a human being, I have to police myself. I'm not perfect. Am I being responsible? Am I listening to people I don't agree with? Am I forgiving? I have to be careful I don't hold grudges against people that I don't agree with, and let it go and be tolerant. And if there's the space for tolerance, I'm not saying I'm completely perfect, because I've got to work on myself.
I think it's really important to listen to all sides. You know, I remember in the previous election in this country, for example, you know, I vote Labour, you know, I make no bones about that. But my problem was that most of my friends on Facebook, Instagram were all Labour. So we all thought, oh, Labour's in with a good chance. You know, I know there was many detractors towards Jeremy Corbyn, whatever his politics, etc. But the fact is, how little we knew, because look what happened.
Because you're only listening to
exactly.
the
and
same,
I think that was the mistake. If we don't listen to everybody, we don't get a feeling.
And the Conservatives.
And
what can we do with that feeling?
What feeling?
That feeling of understanding the other side. What can we do with that?
I believe debate.
Debate, yes. Research. I mean, for instance, Rishi Sunak, the Conservatives are putting forward this thing about national conscription. And if people don't go into national conscription, they can go somewhere else. And I said to my partner, Kammy, today, well, I can understand why they may want to do that for young people. What are the benefits of that? There are other countries. I'm not for it, but I'm interested in to see case studies of what that does for people?
I am
research.
I am concerned that maybe within society, some of the younger generation are coming up with a little bit of a lost purpose.
Of course.
They don't know where to go. They need some direction.
We had youth clubs. People were not being stabbed when Kammy and I, they weren't dying. There was fights.
Yeah,
There were not guns and knives and death, and young people are growing up today.
For example, the town where I live in a town that's quite similar to Romford, Harlow. I don't know if you know it at all, near Stansted Airport. And the nightlife, the nightclubs have gone because of death, because of stabbings. So there is no, there is no community nightlife in the town anymore. It's a dead zone. Because people don't want to go out and be part of that. So it's a dangerous world out there, and I do blame that on not having the community things like the youth groups.
We had them. There was one point in 1 year of my teenagehood where we had 3 discos a week. One on a Tuesday, one on a Friday, and one on a Sunday.
It brought people together, didn't it?
There was still trouble.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But people were not dying. Right? There was fights, and this person was hard, and that person was the cock of the school, and all that. But this is what young people are growing up with now, the fear of death at an early age.
It's also, as you were saying, what have they got to look forward to? The majority of them can't afford to buy a house now.
No.
That's one thing. And I learned recently that, especially in our profession, that a lot of people entering into the profession come from middle to upper class families.
Because how do you get into this?
Exactly.
How do you get into filmmaking at any level almost without having a financial backing?
Pure ambition now, and it's a struggle. The working class are no longer, you can't get the Albert Finneys who came from a working class background and whatever, because they can no longer afford to have that sort of education. Spending 3 years in a drama school, for example, must cost them 30 to 50,000, which they'll be paying back for the rest of their lives. They can't afford to do that.
So what does that do to the art form?
It decreases it. You're just going to get the middle classes. It's just like, for example, I'm sorry to get political here. It's like the Conservative Party, the ones that end up in the top, have all gone to Eton or have been to Oxford or Cambridge.
Is there a problem with that?
To a certain extent, yeah, because I think they're not grounded. They're not grounded in reality. I'm not saying they're doing it for their friends. They're doing it for the country.
But they don't know what it's like to not be able to put food on the table. They don't know what it's like to not pay your rent.
If everything is uniform, what do we learn about difference? If we go to work with the same people who've been to this, it gets very narrow, doesn't it? Having difference, people coming from different backgrounds, you grow, don't you? Because you learn new things.
And of course, with this particular art form, any art form, coming from all different backgrounds is a necessity. Otherwise, how are you going to portray it? How are you going to portray, not only just in acting, but in directing, in a painting? Although Picasso became rich towards the end of his life, he started off very, very poor. And some of his early stuff is fantastic. So we've got to support that. And unfortunately, in order to support that, it needs the government to help these people. I'm not saying give a handout. If people are really deserving, then they should be given an opportunity.
I wonder if that opportunity is within the giving and building the communities. We talked. You mentioned how important the discos were and the youth clubs and the ground foundation of where these people are brought up and coming up from.
Yeah,
you
still it increases their imagination.
You still live in Harlow.
Yes.
So what are people doing about getting something together?
Do you know what? Actually, Harlow do have some really good community things for young people. There's Rock School. Harlow Rock School, which my daughter goes to. She's 15. It's changed her life. It's given her focus and purpose.
Good.
She was having a year or so ago. She was having a really bad time, And actually, it's one of the reasons why I've started doing this is because of her, because I know how important it is to talk about how this can change your life. She went through a really bad time. She found music, and she's a happy girl now.
Yeah.
And that means so much. And she's always going to have music throughout her life. And that's because of a group of volunteers have set up a community hall where they've got instruments that they let the kids experiment with. And they say, here's a guitar, here's a piano, work it out.
Lovely.
And they've got some mentors there.
Yeah.
And yesterday she was at a Rock the Park. She gets up on the stage and becomes something more than herself. And
I personally would be happy to mentor for nothing. My failure is in trying to set something up.
yeah, so I guess it is time as well, isn't it?
If somebody had set something up and said, would you come in and volunteer, I would say yes. And just experiment, play around, get people's imagination going.
We need to do it with Tony in Wood Green.
Yeah, I know.
We need to get back in touch with him. I'm so sorry, Martin. We're going to have to go
That's
now.
okay. No, this has been a wonderful conversation. I did know you were at the festival, so I've just grabbed you in
Lovely.
here. But before we end, then on a final note, because we've gone all over the place with this.
We have.
Your film is why we're here. How do anyone listening in, how do they find your film? Is it out there in the world?
No, not yet.
No,
because it's still on
still
its festival run.
It's still on the festival circuit,
so we
okay.
can't really show it publicly until after all the festivals are all over.
So if they'd like to find out a bit more about it or follow the progress,
Well, they can go to browngirlfilms@gmail.com.
We have a trailer on there. It's quite, it's good filmmaking. I'm not saying it because I directed it, but I was lucky to have the people around me to be able. It's quite old fashioned in the sense it's done in the like a thriller almost. So in that way, it's a great learning curve. It was a learning curve for me. It was a learning curve in editing. It was a learning curve in watching other actors and more importantly, your DOP, you rely on him, So if people want to know anything about that, how it all came together.
Go to The Consequence as well, The Consequence Short on Instagram.
And we're happy to answer any questions that people want to ask.
Yes.
More than happy.
I can't wait to let it get on YouTube. But
I can't wait to see it myself. It sounds like a really impactful film.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
people have just been wowed by it, which is great.
Nice audience there
Really,
as well.
and we've been to a couple of festivals already, and the response has been good. We've been nominated 3 times with this here at Romford.
Lovely.
So it's been good.
You have Kammy, screenplay, actor, and first-time filmmaker. Yeah. Martin,
I really appreciate you both joining
good
me.
luck with your
Thank
daughter
you.
and
Thank
her
you.
community effort.
Yes, I really do appreciate it.
And
So thank you
Cathy,
for joining me.
Microphone.
Wonderful. Yes,
Yes,
don't run off with the microphone.
I'm not.